This is a dramatized story inspired by real debt situations. For educational and entertainment purposes only. Not legal or financial advice.
Hook. I was $142,000 in debt, and my wife had no idea. Not until the morning the sheriff knocked on our door. Reality: my name is David Mercer. I'm 51 years old. I live in Columbus, Ohio. Or at least I used to live there with my wife, Karen, and our 2 kids, Lily and Jake. We had a 4-bedroom house in a nice suburb. Karen drove a Lexus. I coached Little League on weekends. From the outside, we were the family everyone wanted to be. But behind that front door, the walls were closing in. Let me walk you through the numbers. And I want you to really hear these numbers because I spent 3 years pretending they didn't exist. Credit cards, 6 of them, totaling $38,400. That started with one card I opened in 2019 when my contracting business hit a slow quarter, then another card to cover the minimum on the first, then a third to handle Christmas because I couldn't let Karen and the kids have a bad Christmas. You know how that goes. Then there was the medical debt. In 2020, I had a cardiac scare. Just a scare, they said. But the hospital didn't care that it was just a scare when they sent me a bill for $24,700. We had insurance, but our deductible was high, and there were out-of-network charges I didn't understand until it was too late. My truck payment, $687 a month on a work truck I needed for the business. I still owed $19,200 on that loan. A personal loan I took from an online lender in 2021, $22,000 at 24% interest. I told Karen it was a business investment. It was actually me trying to consolidate the credit cards, but I spent part of it covering payroll when 2 big clients paid late. And then the one that truly terrified me, IRS debt. Back taxes from 2 years when my business wasn't withholding correctly. I owed the IRS $37,600 with penalties, with interest that grew every single month. IRS debt doesn't sleep. It doesn't negotiate the way you think it will. And it does not forget. $142,000, and Karen thought we were fine. Emotional crisis. The call started at 8 a.m., sometimes earlier if a collection agency decided to roll the dice on an early morning catch. I'd changed my phone settings, so certain numbers went to voicemail automatically. I had a folder in my email. I called it Old Invoices. But it was actually 312 unread notices from creditors, 2 letters from the IRS, and 1 certified mail notification I'd never picked up from the post office. I was living 2 lives. During the day, I was dad. I was husband. I was the guy who remembered to pick up Lily from soccer, and who grilled burgers on Saturday, and who kissed Karen on the forehead every morning. At night, I was a man drowning so slowly he'd learned to breathe underwater. The insomnia started around month 4 of hiding everything. I'd lie next to Karen. She's a deep sleeper, always has been. And I'd stare at the ceiling and do math in my head. If I landed the Reynolds contract, I could pay the visa minimum and maybe 2 months of the personal loan. If the truck payment came out before the IRS payment cleared. No, wait, I'd moved that account. Which account had the money right now? I lost 14 pounds that year. Karen thought I was finally taking care of myself. She told her sister I looked great. I looked terrified. The moment that broke me, the real moment, wasn't the sheriff at the door. It was actually a Tuesday in March. Jake was at the kitchen table doing homework, and the landline rang. We still had a landline because Karen's mother called on it. I picked it up without thinking. It was a collection agency. Not even a person at first. That robotic pause before the human comes on. And then a man said, very clearly, very loudly, "This is a call for David Mercer regarding an outstanding balance of $12,400 on account ending in 7731. This is an attempt to collect a debt." Jake looked up from his homework. He was 12 years old, and he looked at me with this expression, not scared, not confused, just watching. The way kids watch when they know something is wrong but haven't put the words to it yet. I said, "Wrong number," and hung up. I went to the garage and sat in my truck for 45 minutes. Karen found me there. She didn't say anything at first. She just sat in the passenger seat like she used to when we were dating, and we'd drive nowhere in particular just to be together. Finally, she said, "Dave, what's happening with us?" And I lied. I looked at my wife of 19 years and I said, "Nothing. Just tired, business stuff. I'm handling it." I was not handling it. Wrong choices. Let me be honest about the mistakes, because if you're watching this, you might be about to make them too. And I need you to hear me. Mistake number 1, payday loans. I took 3 of them over 18 months. The first was one of $1,500 just to cover the gap between a client payment and my truck note. The fee was $220 for 2 weeks. That doesn't sound like much until you roll it over. And over. By the time I paid off that first payday loan, I had paid back $2,140 on a $1,500 borrow. The second loan was $2,000. I won't even tell you how that ended. Mistake number 2, balance transfers. I moved $14,000 from one credit card to a new card with a 0% promotional rate. Smart, right? Except I didn't read the fine print on the transfer fee, and I definitely didn't have a plan to pay it off before the promotional period ended at 15 months, when that rate jumped to 27. 99%, I was right back where I started, only now I had another hard inquiry dragging my credit score down. My FICO score, which had been around 680 when this started, not great, but workable, had dropped to 511 by the time I finally faced reality. A 511 FICO score means doors close. It means landlords reject your application. It means you're trapped. Mistake number 3, and this one I will regret for years. I raided my 401k. I took an early withdrawal of $18,000. I told myself it was a loan to myself. What I didn't account for was the 10% early withdrawal penalty, plus the federal and state income taxes on that distribution. By the time I filed taxes that year, I owed an additional $6,400 to the IRS on top of the back taxes I already couldn't pay. I had essentially borrowed from my future self and charged myself a 40-cent fee on every dollar. Mistake number 4 was ignoring the certified mail. That envelope I never picked up from the post office. It was a notice of intent to levy. The IRS was preparing to garnish my business accounts. When a collection agency or the IRS moves from letters to legal action, your window to negotiate quietly gets very small, very fast. And the biggest mistake of all, I kept lying to Karen. Every time she asked why money was tight, I had an answer. Slow quarter. Big expense coming up for the business. I've got it handled. 3 years of handled, and we were still sinking. Turning point. The sheriff. I need to tell you about the sheriff. It was a Wednesday morning in October. Karen was getting Lily ready for school. I was in the kitchen pouring coffee. The knock was official. 3 heavy knocks, not a neighbor's knock. I knew before I opened the door. It was a civil process server, not actually a sheriff's deputy, but he wore a uniform and carried an envelope, and he handed me papers in front of my house in my neighborhood, where people walk their dogs in the morning. We were being sued by one of the credit card companies. A judgment had been filed. They were pursuing wage garnishment. I stood there in my socks on the front porch holding those papers, and I couldn't move. Karen appeared behind me. She read the papers over my shoulder. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just said very quietly, "How long, David?" 3 years. She left with the kids to stay at her sister's that night. Not permanently, she made that clear. But she needed space to think, and honestly, so did I. That night, alone in our house, I sat at the kitchen table with every piece of mail I'd been hiding, every credit card statement, every IRS letter, every payday loan receipt, and I spread it all out. For the first time, I saw the complete picture, not the version I'd been managing in my head at 2 a.m., the real version. Written down, totaled up, I typed bankruptcy attorney near me into my phone at 11:47 p.m. The next morning, I called a nonprofit credit counseling agency, one approved by the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. They offered a free consultation. I also called a bankruptcy attorney who offered a free initial review. I want to tell you what I learned in those 2 conversations because nobody had ever laid it out for me plainly before. Educational info. The credit counselor explained that I had a few real paths forward, and each one had consequences I needed to understand before choosing. Debt consolidation was one option, rolling multiple debts into one loan with a lower interest rate. The counselor was honest with me. With a 511 credit score, I wasn't going to qualify for a favorable consolidation rate without a cosigner, and even then, it wouldn't touch my IRS debt. Debt consolidation can be a powerful tool, but it works best before your credit score has taken serious hits and before you're facing legal judgments. Debt settlement was another option, where you negotiate with creditors to pay less than you owe. The risks are real. You typically have to stop paying creditors, which devastates your credit score further. The forgiven debt can be taxable income, and not every creditor will settle. It's not a clean solution, and the counselor was very direct that I should be cautious of any company promising guaranteed results, because no one can guarantee that. The bankruptcy attorney walked me through Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. Chapter 7. Bankruptcy, he explained, is a liquidation process. It can discharge many unsecured debts like credit cards and medical bills relatively quickly, often within 3 to 6 months. But there are income eligibility requirements, and not all debt can be discharged. Student loans in most cases, and certain tax debts may survive. Chapter 13. Bankruptcy is a reorganization. You keep your assets and work through a 3 to 5 year repayment plan. For someone with a home they want to protect and regular income, Chapter 13 can stop a foreclosure and create a structured path forward. For my IRS debt specifically, the attorney noted that some tax debt can be dischargeable under Chapter 7 if it meets certain age and filing requirements. But this is complicated, and the rules matter enormously. He was clear. Consult a licensed professional before making any decisions about tax debt and bankruptcy. The combination of those 2 issues requires specialized guidance. The credit counselor also explained what any of these paths would do to my credit score and my FICO score long term. Chapter 7, bankruptcy stays on your credit report for 10 years. Chapter 13 stays for 7. Both are serious, but both are survivable. And a 511 score with judgments and levy threats isn't exactly a position of strength either. Hear me on this. I am not a financial advisor or an attorney. I'm a guy who waited too long and paid for it. Please consult a licensed professional before making any decisions about your debt situation. Resolution. Karen came home 4 days later. We sat at that same kitchen table, all the papers still spread out, and I told her everything. All of it, every number, every lie, every mistake. She cried. I cried. We didn't solve anything that night, but we agreed on one thing. We were going to face it together, or we weren't going to face it at all. Separately, we'd both collapse. Together, maybe we had a chance. I filed for Chapter 13 bankruptcy 2 months later. It was not a magic solution. It was a structured beginning. The automatic stay stopped the wage garnishment immediately. The IRS levy threat paused while the bankruptcy process sorted out what could and couldn't be addressed. We kept the house, barely, but we kept it. My credit score is 548 right now. It will be that way for a while. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but 548 moving forward with a plan is better than 511 in freefall with no plan. Karen and I are still married. It's different now. Harder in some ways, more honest in every way. She handles the finances now. That was her condition. It was fair. If you are sitting in your car in the garage right now doing math in your head at midnight, I need you to hear this. The number is not the end of the story. The hiding is what nearly broke everything. The moment I put the papers on the table was the moment things could actually get better. You don't have to solve it tonight. You just have to stop hiding it tonight. That's the first step. CTA, download the free debt recovery checklist linked in the description below.